Well, thank you again to our sponsors who will all be with us tonight at dinner, and we have a boat cruise. Warren, can we switch back to the schedule? So before we bash the agenda, I wanted to make a few opening remarks of my own. First and foremost, I realize that most DNS work is done inside of the IETF. This is not that. So although Suzanne Wolf, who is the co-chair of the DNS Op Working Group, has honored us with her presence, she's not here to chair the meeting. This is not an IETF working group session. This is a workshop. This is just a bunch of people who are interested in the topic, who are getting together to have some longer conversations about it. So the second thing I want to say is why. I kind of roped a number of people into this, and thank you so much, Warren, for agreeing to co-chair and do all the work. It's really a couple of things. I have watched now, as part of both the ICANN ITI process that Dr. Makapetris ran earlier this year, and in the IETF working groups that are related to this, and I'm talking not only of DNSOP now, but DNS EXT in years before. I've watched these topics come and go, and I've watched a number of people have some fairly long airplane flights to come into a room where there was a total of 1 to 2 hours allocated to the general topic, the very large general topic of DNS. They would get their 5 minutes to present their latest version of some slide. There might be a few questions. There might be a big argument if it's a controversial proposal, and then that's it. And I'll tell you that for me, I have 4 children, I have a company to run, I have a lot of things that draw on my time. The internet is obviously a big one, and I am willing to put my time into the internet, as all of you also do. What I'm not willing to do is fly to Hawaii and back for a 2-hour meeting. So really, if you want to get me on an airplane, we need to be talking about DNS in a bigger way than will fit into the framework of a larger meeting that is about the internet overall. So this is an opportunity to have a longer conversation about various topics related to DNS root service architecture. Warren and I have struggled to find the universal principle that underlies all the discussions that we think will take place here in the next couple of days. And looking simply at the presentations that were offered, what we came up with is as follows. So the root name servers are not used in every transaction on the internet, and the internet does not route all its traffic through them. Those are two things that I often hear policy people and press people say that we all know is wrong. Nevertheless, they are very important because they are the means by which tens of millions of recursive name servers discover which other name server is responsible for a TLD. And so they collectively receive a couple of 100,000 queries per second from all over the globe. Of course, a lot of those queries are junk, and that might be a topic we address today. I know Dwayne Wessels and Evie Nemeth and some others have studied the junk question over the years. But in any case, the root servers are not as important as some people think they are. As I said, they don't route all the traffic on the internet. That is an urban legend. But they are nevertheless important, and they constitute an external dependency for all of us. In other words, if you want to get work done on the internet, you need access to root name service. And so anything important on the internet eventually becomes a DDoS target, distributed denial of service. And that was true of the root name servers. And so the root name server operators have decided to sort of take matters into their own hands and widely anycast their servers. And we have a couple of root name server operators represented in the room today. I no longer speak for F, but I am certainly here to speak for C, which is operated by Cogent Communications. And I'll tell you that most of the root name server operators have taken their role as the world's external dependency very seriously. And they have put as many copies of their root name server around the world as was possible, limited only by availability of resources. And so we now have hundreds of root name servers. That does not make them DDoS proof. Please, everyone within the sound of my voice, do not think that I am provoking you to somehow prove to me that they can be DDoSed. I know that. It's just a little bit harder because we now have hundreds instead of a dozen, and I think that's important. Nevertheless, hundreds is an interesting number. It's a controversial number, and there is a lot of interest in having more. Some people say they think there should be more root letters, and some people even have some ideas about where those root letters should be located. That is off topic. We are not going to talk about any political wrangling having to do with whether we don't have enough letters today. If you want to talk about that, we have a social tonight, and if you put a beer into my hand, I think you know I'll talk about anything you want. But at this meeting, we are not here to talk about expanding the number of root server operators. Nevertheless, Warren and Paul Hoffman, Warren Kamari, Paul Hoffman, have a draft that talks about adding more root name servers. They want to put one on not every loopback, but a whole lot of loopback networks around the net. I have one, which I've written with Xiaodong, that also talks about how to create a lot more root name servers. We're also going to hear about why the priming query is more important than we thought, and why TCP might be more involved than we thought, and why that might not be the same as other traditional DNS queries, simply because of the difference between root name servers and every other set of name servers on the DNS. And all of these have as their central thesis that we need a more robust and perhaps larger root DNS infrastructure. And so while staying away from the question of adding more letters and staying away from both ICANN politics and national politics, we hope to study that as a team. And I want to say I am honored, perhaps even humbled, by the fact that 30 of you got on an airplane and came here without really knowing why. You just heard that this meeting was going on, and you thought that Warren or I were likely to say something that you might want to hear, and you're here, and I appreciate the hell out of that. So, with those introductory remarks, let's talk a little bit about logistics. We have a break at, is it really 11? I thought we had that break at 10:30, not... Oh, left-hand column, thank you. Okay, we have a break at 10:30. We need to hit that break on time because there's hotel staff that will appear at 10:30 and food and so forth. It's in the next room, so it's a very short walk. That room is also where we will have lunch at 12:30. We're going to break until 2, give us some time for some hallway discussions. We have another break in the afternoon. At 5:30, there will be a bus outside the front of this hotel to take us to a restaurant. And after the restaurant, we'll have a bus that will take us on to a place for a harbor cruise. Chester very much underspoke his team's role in this. If you want to get something done and it's not the city you live in, you have to find the people who live there and work there and know how to get things done there. And in my case, that was ISOC Hong Kong in the person of Ping Wong, Pindar Wong, and Chester. And I just want to say this meeting could not have taken place without their, not just their efforts, but their superhuman efforts on our behalf. Ping will be joining us on the boat tour of the harbor. Chester, as I said, will be joining us for dinner. So let's talk a little bit about the presentations themselves. Warren, could you move up? Thank you. What Warren and I thought we would do is each of us go through the current draft that we have on that are in the IETF process. Mine was rewritten last night, or rewritten in the last week or so, but sent to you last night. I know you haven't had time to read it, but I have slides. Warren and Paul did get a draft out a week or so ago. It's very short, very easy to read, so you're probably more up to date on that than on mine. And that should take us through to lunch. Now we've got a period of time here on the schedule to have an open discussion of the two drafts, and so I will advise that if you have questions about one draft that you think might actually appeal to both drafts, then please hold them until the open discussion period before lunch. Warren, could we see the rest of today's schedule? So After lunch, we're going to hear about the root priming and about some other issues related to the evolution of root zone operation. And the AS-112 presentation I really threw in there on a lark because it happens to use unowned anycast, and I thought that we should at least talk about it. It turns out that none of the operators or authors of any of those specifications are here, so Paul Hoffman is going to lead us on an analysis of that. We don't have a presenter for integrity protection for entire zones, but that's been an interesting recent topic, and it certainly is, the root zone would be the zone most people care about having integrity protection for. DNSSEC does not cover whole zones. DNS doesn't cover a lot of things, and this is one of them that we might have been wrong about. And then finally, we're hoping to stop at 4:30 and let everybody have some time to themselves before coming back downstairs to go for dinner at 5:30. Tomorrow we have a block of time, looks like hour and a half, during which other proposals will be there, and to the extent that interesting things get discussed tonight during the social or today during today's meetings that lead to any of the drafts that are being talked about being changed, we'll hear about those changes tomorrow as well. So let me throw it out to you guys. Does any of this seem like it's in the wrong order, or it's a waste of the time that we have together, or other revisions to what you see? Does anybody have a presentation that they would like to offer? Warren.
I guess I'll try the mic. Apologies, I meant to mention we do actually have a presenter for the unmanaged, sorry, I lied, that integrity protection for the entire zone. I had meant to update that, but I forgot. Paul says he can, Paul Hoffman says he can present that.
All right.
And I apologize again, entirely my fault for not mentioning.
I think there's enough fault to go around. I'll take some. So again, revisions to this agenda. It's just it's an online spreadsheet. In fact, we've sent out the URL so you could look at it on the laptop if you want. Is there more that you'd like to talk about, or some change that you can propose to what's here? This is, again, the estimate that Warren and I made in order to have some structure to then throw darts at. Okay. So in that case, let's move to our first presentation, which I think means we're ahead of schedule by 3 minutes. Cool. So is that Hoffman or Kamari? One more matter. This meeting is being broadcast on YouTube. The URL was sent out. The camera is pointed at this podium, and there are not microphones elsewhere in the room. We have 2 floating microphones. So when we are doing our roundtable discussions, we're going to shut off the camera and yell because we just don't have enough microphones, and it would be too terrible to try and shift these around. But all of the presentations will be webcast on YouTube and then made available later on YouTube. So if you're at this podium, prepare to be seen by tens of people.